Alright, so this is what you missed. You missed stem changing verbs, or they're also known as boot verbs. So it's kind of important that you follow along just to make sure that you understand. Now we're going to break down, go like to the very beginning, and kind of dissect the verb. So the verb has two different parts. The first part is known as the ending, and the second part is known as the stem. Okay? So if we have the word here, for example, of escribir, right? If we look at the last two letters right here, that of the IR would be the ending. So we have escribir, again, the IR is known as the ending, and then whatever is left other than the IR is going to be your stem. Right? So normally when we conjugate a verb, we drop the last two letters, and then we go ahead and we're left with the stem. So then what you do is you add the correct ending to your stem to conjugate a verb. Right? So it's pretty similar. Now, when it comes to stem changing verbs, there are actually 4 types of stem changing verbs. So there's actually 5 of them, but one of them is so rare that you're probably never going to have to use it. But there are 4 types of stem changing verbs that are very common in Spanish. Okay, the first are known as E to IE verbs. Okay, the next are known as E to I verbs. Then we have O to UE verbs, and lastly we have U to UE verbs. Okay, so again, I'll show you what this means right here. So in the meantime, like, don't worry about it. Just kind of know that there are 4 types of stem changing verbs. Okay, now we're going to start off with the verb querer. So when we have the verb querer is technically an ER verb, right? So if you were like to regularly conjugate the verb, we would drop the ER and add our endings. Now, the only thing with this particular verb is that it's technically a stem changer. So if you look right here, this is supposed to go from an E to an IE. And because of that, we have to conjugate it slightly different. Now, this has to follow the basic conjugations of a regular verb, so you're going to drop the ending and you're going to be left with your stem. So if you look at our verb querer, and we drop our ending, which would be the ER, you're going to be left with quer. Right? So now that you're left with quer, it says because querer is an E to IE stem changer, we have to change the E in quer to an IE before we add our ending. So our new stem, in this case, is going to be quier. Right? So basically what happens is this E right here changes to IE. Okay? Now, there's one catch to this. So when we're conjugating stem changing verbs, you're never going to change the stem in the nosotros form. Okay? So what that means is the following. If we go down here to our chart of querer or to want, you would write down the stem of quier, because that's our stem changer, right? Our new stem. So we were going to write down quier, quier, quier. Now when we get to nosotros, it's going to be slightly different. So for nosotros, it's actually going to be the regular quier. Okay? And then once we get to ellos, ellas, y ustedes, you would have quier as your stem. Now, querer is an ER verb, which means that you're going to follow the regular verb endings for ER verbs. So in this case, you're still going to just go through and regularly conjugate it. So my new conjugation for querer, for example, is going to be, so yo quiero, tú quieres, él, ella, usted quiere, nosotros queremos, right, because it's an ER verb, and then ellos, ellas, y ustedes quieren. Okay? Now, again, we can look at the stem itself. right, that E up here changed into an IE, and that's why we have that down here. However, in the nosotros form, this stayed the same, right? Queremos is still, the stem is the same. And then again, down here, we have quieren. Alright? So now we're going to go through and we're going to conjugate another E to IE verb. And in this case, we have the verb cerrar. And cerrar means to close. So if we're looking at cerrar, again, we would be doing the exact same thing. So you would drop your ending of the AR, and then the letter E turns into an IE. So my new stem would be cier. Now don't forget that there's two R's right there, so you want to include both of them. So you're going to fill in your chart with that. Cier, cier, cier. Now nosotros, again, don't forget that it's going to be a little bit different. So you're still going to, add your regular conjugation of, your regular stem of ser, right? We don't use the vosotros. I mean, you can if you really want to, but I don't really utilize it, obviously. And then, again, you just go through and you add your verb ending. So, yo cierro, tú cierras, él cierra, nosotros cerramos, right? Because this is an AR verb, technically. And then, ellos, ellas, y ustedes cierran. Okay? So, again, if you look, this is the only one that follows the regular conjugation. The other ones follow the regular stem change. Okay? Now, this is why they are called boot verbs. So we're going to look at the verb pensar in this case. And again, it's another E to IE stem changing verb. And we're going to do the following. So again, it's an AR verb, so we're going to drop our AR. And then you were changing that E into an IE. So my new stem, would be piens. Okay? So you go through and write that in. Piens, piens, piens. Now for this one's going to be pens, right? Because it's nosotros, and that one does not follow that same stem changing. And then piens again. Then we go through, we can go ahead and add our correct verb ending, which in this case, yo pienso, tú piensas, él piensa, nosotros pensamos, and ellos piensan. Oops, that should be an N. Let me erase this real quick. Maybe not. There we go. Okay. Now, this is why they're called boot verbs. And this is kind of like a nice little diagram just so that you know like when you should be changing those stems. So if you draw or outline the verbs that you were able to change the stem for, right? So in the yo, tú, él, ella, usted, ellos, ellas, y ustedes, this changes, right? The E to IE. However, in the nosotros form, right over here, it doesn't. So it makes, the chart pretty much makes the shape of a boot. So this one, and actually vosotros also does not change. But again, we don't use it that often, so you only have to worry about nosotros. Okay? Now, the following page has a couple of different, or the most common boot verbs that we're going to use in my class. So I will kind of go through with you so that you can write in the definition, because that's basically what we did in classes. We just define what these words mean. That way you can always have a list of these verbs in case you're like, I don't know what the stem for these words would be. And then the other question that some people ask me is, how do you know when to use a stem changer versus when to not use a stem changer? And basically it's you either have to memorize the verbs that are stem changers, but for the most part in my class, I'm just going to tell you what the stem changing what the stem changes to. So for example, E to IE, so on. So let's go ahead and fill this out. Pensar means to think. Okay. Querer is to want. Entender is to understand. Cerrar is to close. Preferir is to prefer. And the last one, empezar, is to begin or to start. Okay? Then we have E to IE stem changing verbs. And we have the verb ser, and this should actually be an I. I don't know why it's an E right there, but it should be servir. And servir is going to be to serve. Pedir is to ask for or to order. Seguir is to follow. Competir is to compete. And then we have O to UE verbs. So the first one is the verb dormir. So dormir means to sleep. Acostar is to lay down. Almorzar is to eat lunch. Right, so it's the action, it's not like almuerzo, like lunch itself. It's to eat lunch. Poder is to be able to. Encontrar is to find. Volver is to return. Now, the only U to UE verb that we are going to cover, and basically the only one that exists, is the verb jugar. And jugar significa to play. Okay? Now, people have asked me, or a lot of, students have asked me, like, how do you know which, for example, if we look at the verb, here we go, the verb entender, right? So if we have the verb entender, like, how do we know which E to drop and change it into an IE? Because there's three of them, right? There's, in this one, and this one. Now, the first way of knowing is if there's multiple E's or multiple O's or whatever, obviously it's not going to count for the last two letters because those are your verb endings. So that doesn't count as an E for the stem. What you're going to do instead is typically, within your stem, the second vowel, like for example the second E, would be the one that you would drop and change into that new stem. So the second E is the one you're going to change. Obviously, you're not going to change this first E for entender. However, you would change the second E right here to obviously turn it into understand. Okay? So hopefully that helps. Now what I want you to do is obviously go through and complete the Conjuguemos stem changing practice. And I'll email a couple of the other sheets that you are missing. Okay?